I want to level up our Pokemon very quickly, and one of the best ways that we can do this is by using XP candies. Not only do these candies give a ridiculous amount of experience, but later on we can turn them into more candies, which boosts Pokemon's IV stats, enabling us to make super overpowered Mons. So today, I've come up with a design which fits a tiny 6x7x8 footprint, which passively generates almost 500 of the XL candies per hour. Not only that, the only input you need to give it is power. Want to know how to build it? Well, stay tuned and find out. Welcome back to AllTheMons, and check out my funky armor. Today I've got a couple of plans, and you're intruding, mate. I want to sort out two things. Now, the first thing is that I want to be able to make myself a load of the XP candies. I mentioned 2 episodes back that you can upgrade your candies from the XS tier all the way up into S, and then medium tier, large tier, and then even extra large. So it would definitely be good to get started on that today, and the way that you make the smallest version is by using Skulk and Honeycomb. Now, both of those can actually be generated via mystical agriculture seeds, so I need to try and make a good farm for both of them. And that is where I'm going to go with the hydroponic bed method. But first, I want to upgrade our Infinity Range Booster, because we're now able to get that dimensional card since we now have access to Nether Stars. And I didn't actually realise this, but that Infinity Range Booster is actually a part of the AllTheMods star recipe. Well, I think that is pretty cool. Anyway, let's grab that dimensional card. This means that we can actually get cross-dimensional AE access. So that means that if I go into the End or the Nether, I can actually access my AE system here. Another thing that I want to note is that the gym jar has actually gone. I know, sad times, man. But it's not actually gone. I've just changed it up to have a waystone instead. It still exists, it's just not in our world. The main reason for that is that I noticed that I was getting about 20 less FPS by having that in my world. I don't entirely know why, but luckily it can exist without the block being placed. And so we still have the gym jar, but I've replaced it with the waystone instead, and now this is the way that we access it.
And I heard that you'll get 20 less FPS if you don't like and subscribe immediately.
So, hydroponic beds, there's actually 2. There's the basic hydroponic bed, and then there's a simulated hydroponic bed. We'll get into these ones a little bit later, but first we need to make the regular hydroponic bed. How do we do that? Well, everything here is already craftable apart from the fertilizer, and we get that from a sewage composter, and you need to get sewage, which we can get from a sewer, just like so. So I'll craft all of these things up. And we're going to need a mob that's actually going to produce sewage. And as far as I'm aware, I don't believe that the regular Mons do. So I'm actually going to go into our market and grab a cow, because I know 100% that cows definitely produce sewage. Perfect. Right, I'm going to take this into the gym jar. So I need to first place the sewer. That has a working area of, it's a bit difficult to see, but just this block. And if I place a cow inside there, like so, and give this guy a little bit of power, we should be producing sewage. We're producing 50 millibuckets every 5 seconds. We're going to upgrade that with a little bit of add-ons. Great, that's a lot faster, and we're producing a lot more of it. Right, then I will place down a sewage composter next to it. And I'm going to do 2 things here. Well, number 1 is simply powering it up like that. And then I want to push sewage into that direction. Inside that sewage composter, that is now processing and giving us that fertilizer. I'm going to add a couple of add-ons in there, and then we might as well just produce quite a lot of this, so I will quickly time wand both of these to produce us all of the sewage we'll ever need. Oh, it's a little bit grim. Great, that is, what, 3.5 stacks of fertilizer. And so I'll take that back to the base, and let's craft up one of these hydroponic beds. Great, so let me place this down. Now, the hydroponic bed is going to look a little bit confusing here. We need to pump in a couple of things. Number 1, power, obviously. We then need to give it a water bucket. I don't believe we have to keep fueling this with water. I'll find out a bit later. Someone was telling me that we don't need to do that.
Jim from the future here, you do need to fill this up with water. Later on, I'll use a sink for this. I think people might have been getting confused with the potion brewer, where that only needs 1 water bucket. But for the hydroponic bed, you definitely need to be supplying water.
But then the last ingredient that we need is something called ether, or specifically ether gas. And the way that you get this is very weird and confusing. We need to place a fluid laser base and then give it some power with laser drills over the top of a wither. We also need to give it a purple lens to focus that into creating ether gas. And there's no requirements for biomes or dimensions, so we can do this anywhere. Now, that is a little bit mad because obviously the wither is explosive and will move around. And so we need to craft a stasis chamber. I'll craft up one of those to demonstrate. And what a stasis chamber does, I'm going to plonk it on this power over here. I'll show this working area off. This is basically an area that if you stand within it, you'll basically get slowness and a bunch of regeneration. You literally cannot move off this block unless you jump. It's crazy. So the idea is to have a wither on top of this stasis chamber and then use the fluid laser base on top of it with those laser drills to actually get yourself the ether gas. Now, if you're like me, I hate having a wither anywhere near my base just because I know that it could easily fall apart. And so I tend to get the ether gas bee quite quickly. We will be getting into this, but you do need an ether gas bucket to begin this. And so you still have to set this up anyway. So right now, I will go into the gym jar for this. That seems to be my mini lawn base. I'm going to pull out a cable and we'll pop down a stasis chamber like this. And we'll make sure to give them add-ons. That will speed this up and give the wither a little bit more regeneration. And then I'm going to go up by, I think the wither is about 2 blocks tall. We'll find out shortly.
It's actually an extra block tall, but it doesn't matter because I'll show you another tip later on.
So I'm going to place the laser fluid base right on top of his head like that. And then I need to grab myself a lens. Now, the way that we do that is through the dissolution chamber. So I'll quickly make a recipe for that. And then just add it over here. And craft ourselves up one of these. Now, to power up the fluid laser base, we need to use laser drills. The more you have, the more ether gas you'll actually generate. And you can place these, I believe, up to 3 blocks away from the actual drill itself. You'll see, when you have placed this correctly, it will produce these particles showing you the direction that this beam's going in. And they don't have to be facing it directly. I've got these ones at a little angle over here. I think you can also have them up and down like this. You'll see it's still producing those particles, which means that this is going to be still working. So all we need to do then is just power these guys. I will use cable again. Just placing that all over here. And then we can test that this works, making sure that our laser base is inside, making sure our depth is also set to a number that is within these requirements. So minimum -64, maximum 256. We've got it at 5. That should work. And then we should just be able to summon in our wither. I'm going to do it like this. And if everything goes right... Oh. I have a feeling I've just made it a little bit too small. And it's not generating that ether gas. Right. Well, that's fine, because I'm thinking what I can do is actually just make a personal shrinking device like so. Make sure that's charged up. And what I'm going to do here is grab my personal shrinking device, and I'm going to set the size over here, and then right-click the wither's hitbox to shrink him down to that size. And I think, yeah, now we're generating ether gas. Right, perfect. He's now incredibly tiny, and we're able to take out some of this ether gas. I used F3 and B to see the hitboxes there. I've just got to make sure that it is underneath that fluid laser base. And from here, you can actually add add-ons to the laser drills to speed up the production, like that. And we should be generating a decent portion of ether gas. Yep, that is looking good to me. So right now, for a little bit of testing, I'm going to grab this ether gas using a mechanism tank. I can just right-click to drain all of that, and then I'll go back into the overworld. So the hydroponic bed, let's see what it's all about. I'm going to first make sure that this is getting some power, and then we'll give it a bucket of water as well. And if I place the fluid tank to the right of it, I can actually set this to pull in ether gas from that left-hand side. And this works as if it was regular farmland. So I can whack maybe a wheat seed on top of this, and you'll see that it basically just automatically harvests wheat. It's not particularly fast right now because we need to add some add-ons. And speaking of add-ons, I also got myself up to the tier 4 add-ons. Last episode, I made the tier 2 add-ons. These were really easy, just using diamond gears. The tier 3 add-ons use some pink slime. And obviously we've got a finite supply of this at the moment, so just trying to be a bit more careful with it. And then the last one requires some echo shards, skulk, netherite gear, and then some XP juice, which we also sorted out last episode. So I grabbed myself one of each of these. I'll plonk them all in, and we'll see how quickly that grows. And if you look inside this bed here, yeah, that's producing it really rapidly. And it does use water. I don't know who was telling me it doesn't use water. It definitely uses water. So in that case, what I'm going to do is place a sink right behind it, set the water configuration to pull from the back, and that's also water sorted as well. Right, and obviously, wheat is not particularly useful. So I'm going to take all of this out, and I want to make skulk seeds. They're not difficult at all. They're just tertium essence, and we've obviously got tons of this essence. We actually got most of this essence from our quarry in the mining dimension, and we haven't needed to get any more. We've just converted it all into supremium, and then we'll just cut it all down if we ever need it. And then we need 4 skulk, and then lastly, we need a seed base. And then I can just whack all of these in the mystical agriculture pedestal, pop that in, and then we can make skulk seeds. Great. Right, so let's try the skulk seeds instead and see how quickly these guys grow. Check that out. That is rapid. That is really quick. So provided that we've got ether gas and we've got water, we can actually generate a load of the skulk essence, honey essence, and then craft that up into skulk, and then we'll be able to craft that into Candy XS. But hold your horses, we can upgrade this. I mentioned earlier about the simulated hydroponic bed, and what this does is if I just craft up one of these, I then need to make sure that I've got myself a hydroponic simulation processor. I actually have these on autocraft, and they're not that difficult. They do require a diamond gear though, and I'll place this simulated hydroponic bed just so that it's attached to this flux point, so we're getting energy. And the way that this works is we need to actually train a model on a specific seed type to generate more. It's a bit like hostile neural networks, but for seeds. So what we're going to do is go into our hydroponic bed, and this slot over here is actually where we're going to be placing that hydroponic simulation processor. So let's pop that in here. And as soon as that happens, you'll see three things. First of all, it sets it to simulating the skulk seeds. Then we've got the execution, so the amount of times it's actually training this model, and the efficiency. And as the efficiency goes up, you'll see the potential drops also goes up. And right now, I can actually take out this simulation processor and take my seed as well, and I can pop both of these into the simulated hydroponic bed. And I'll quickly take out the add-ons and move this over here, and it will work. It will actually generate those drops significantly slower right now, but it will generate the drops that the skulk seeds would produce. But you'll notice we don't have to feed this any water. We don't have to feed this any ether gas. It just runs off of electricity. And what's even more interesting is that it will still train the model as this is being used. It's really, really slow. It's nowhere near as fast as training it into a hydroponic bed. But for the fact that we don't have to use ether gas or water, and we can just time on this, we can actually train this so much quicker. You'll see we're at efficiency 0.9 already. I'm going to try and get this to somewhere like 1.5 or 2. Now, the more training you do, the harder the training becomes, so the efficiency will slowly give you diminishing returns. So don't expect to get yourself up to efficiency 10 or something. It will take a long, long time to get there. In the meantime, we're producing a load of this skulk essence, so I'm going to store all of that away in my discs. And I'll get the other one set up as well for the honey essence that we've got currently generating in our gym jar. I'll take all of that stuff and quickly go back home, placing in the honey seeds like so, and then adding our simulation just here. I crafted up another set of tier 4 add-ons so we can actually get this seed training up even quicker. And I wonder, if I time on this part in particular, how quick does the efficiency go up? A lot quicker. Whoa, okay. Obviously it drains our ether gas like it's no one's business, but that's a pretty good way to train up our models. So I'll take out the model. We're at 1.5-ish efficiency now. I'll take out the model, take out that, and then we can go downstairs and begin setting up our candy farm. So I'll do it in this room over here.
No, you won't, mate. Right, so this is the final design that I've come up with. And yes, I'm future Green Jim with a sore throat. I'm sorry. I built this system 3 times in different ways, and this just ended up being the best thing. And unfortunately, I have to stick it in my planarium, because you'll see every single one of these pots produces a little bit of a particle effect here, which is just not nice on my computer's performance for some reason. But anyway, I will quickly explain how this all works. I have 8 simulated hydroponic beds. 2 of them are the skulk ones, and then these 6 over here are all honey seeds. They've all got tier 4 add-ons inside of them. And in the code, I'm grabbing every single thing from the simulators and outputting it to this raw materials barrel. This is the raw materials barrel here. So you'll see we're getting the skulk essence, the honey essence, and fertilized essence. I have a void upgrade here so that we will never generate too much of this material. And then I'm inputting just the skulk essence and the honey essence, outputting it to the crafter. The crafter is just over here. It's a tier 3 crafter from RF Tools. And I've got 2 recipes set up. The honeycomb essence to producing honeycomb, and then the skulk essence producing skulk. And you'll see the ratios here. We're actually going to be producing a lot more skulk than honeycomb, and that's why I've got more of the honey seeds rather than the skulk seeds. I've got that set to external, meaning it will go into this external buffer just down here. And then we've got that in the code over here to input from the crafter. That'll get all of those materials and then output them to the drawer. The drawer is just here. I didn't know what to call this, I just called it drawer. And this is where we're placing the raw materials for our campfires just down here. After that, we then get into producing our candies. Now, this might look a little bit confusing, so I'm going to explain this to you. I'm going to grab a campfire here and a campfire pot and just pop that on top. And what we're trying to do is actually just place in the recipe for that candy, which is just skulk and honeycomb. So we want it to appear like this. Now, if I was just using hoppers or any kind of item pipes and had skulk coming into this machine, it would just be outputting it, and now the recipe no longer works. And so this is where SFM is really handy. We're taking in the items from the drawer, and we're using output retain. And output retain will basically make sure that it retains 2 items, and we're specifying the slot here. So we're outputting and retaining 2 skulk into slot 1 of the XS campfires. We're then doing the exact same with honeycomb into slot 2. Now, if you're not familiar with SFM's slots mechanics, if you open up any kind of inventory and press Control and I, you can see every single slot ID. So this is the slot 1 where the skulk is going, this is slot 2 where the honeycomb's going, and that's where we're trying to retain those items. I know that there's ways of doing this with integrated dynamics or laser IO. SFM is just the best one for this. It's so much quicker to set up. Another thing I want to say is I'm using the number 2 here, and I'll explain that really quickly. The SFM code is running at 20 ticks, meaning that every second this whole process happens. If I just retained 1 like so, it will produce the excess candy, but then it won't be producing another one until we add those ingredients in. So the reason I put 2 in there and make sure that we're retaining 2 is because it will craft this, and it will still be crafting in the background even if we haven't inputted the new materials in. So there we go. We can do this at any time. It will always be producing this EXP Candy XSs. So once that's being produced, we're then moving on to the next step, which is producing XS to S. But that's this recipe here. We're trying to make XP Candy S's from our XS candies. So what we're trying to do in this campfire is retaining Candy XS's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 to 6 slots. So then from that process, we just go from S to M, and then M to L, and then L to XL. And then lastly, we're inputting from that XL and popping it into the result barrel just here. I'm going to warn you guys, flashbang incoming. I have color coordinated my campfires. You don't have to do this. I just did because it was a lot easier to see visually. All of the red campfires are XS's. The green campfires are XS to S's. Blue are S to M. And then we've got the yellow ones that are going into L, and then finally there. Now, I'm going to talk about ratios a little bit. For us to be producing S candy, we need to have 6 XS's constantly running. So to have that running, that is the ratio that you're going to be using. But let's say I now want to craft Candy M's. That needs 3 of the Candy S's. So what I've done is duplicated the amount of S candies that we're producing, which also means that we need to produce even more of these XS candies in order to produce just 1 of these Candy M's. This ratio also extends into Candy L's, because now we need 3 Candy M's. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that one because I think I've shown the point already. And now that you know the ratio, I can explain how this is all working. I've got 3 platforms of 6 by 6. That's 36, 36, 36. That is 108 of these XS campfires, all producing Candy XS from the Skulk and Honeycomb. 108 divided by 6 is 18, and so therefore I have 18 of these pots here, which are producing these small candies. Divide that by 3, and we now have 6 of the Candy M pots being produced here. Divide that by 3, and then you end up with 2 of the Candy L pots, and then I just popped a Candy XL pot on the end here. It doesn't match the ratio, but we need the Candy XL as just the output product, so I didn't really care for this part. But we're able to produce ourselves Candy XLs at a really, really nice rate. It's not the most efficient setup. We could probably make this faster. However, it fits in a 6 by 7 by 8 cube, which is quite compact, and I quite like compactness over having the most insane speed farm. All of the code here you'll see on my Discord server, so you can just copy and paste it into your world, grab your label gun, label up everything correctly, and then just push your labels into the factory manager. You can copy my setup here of the 6 by 6 by 3 XS's, which will fit in the footprint of this farm. Or you could try and make this a little bit more efficient, but I'll leave that with you guys. Either way, post-recording, we've been producing tons of this stuff. I've got 2.5k Candy XLs right now, which is more than we'll ever need. And later on, we're going to be making the IV candies, and they actually use the XLs. You can use the Ls, but the XLs are a little bit more efficient, giving you 3. So our stockpile of 2.5k will be really useful for that. To get these campfires ready for SFM automation, you need to place them down like so, then right-click them with a red campfire pot or whatever campfire pot you're using, and then you need to lock the lid. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do this for every single one of the campfire pots, so this does get a little bit hectic. Placing all the campfire pots is the easiest part. It's the closing the lid on every single campfire pot. This is the most annoying thing ever, and you've got to do this for every single campfire. That does take a lot of time. You're also not able to use building gadgets, copy-paste tools, or anything like that. And off camera, I've tried quite a lot of different methods to try and just make this process easier. But if you do know one, please put it in the comment section. Not only will you be helping out me, but you'll be helping out every single person that's watching this video. I literally don't know a faster way. I had to manually do all of these campfires, and it was not fun. But right now, that is looking good. We're producing all of the XL candies that we need. And in fact, let's take a stack of these, because I want to show you how much experience one of these XL candies actually is. Let's find our lowest level mon in our PC. We've got a level 1 Bunnelby, that's perfect. And let's give him 1 of these candies. Let's see what happens. That is all the way up to 31 in just 1 XP candy. Let's try another one. 39. And I'm sure if I gave him 1 more, we'd actually reach level cap. So 3 XP candy XLs is putting the mons to the level cap. The next thing I want to craft is to do with this weather. It is annoying me so much. So what I'm going to do is craft myself the Celestial Manipulator from Draconic Evolution. That won't be too hard. We were locked behind the Nether Star and we've got one of those now. So we can craft all of that up and grab ourselves that Celestial Manipulator. Now this is really cool. If I give this a bunch of FE, what I can do is actually clear skies, create rain, create storm, or I can set times. And if you look on the right hand side of the screen, I can configure this with redstone. So what I'm going to do is break this and craft myself a weather vane just here, this weather vane, and then a comparator. And somewhere upstairs, maybe in this corner here, I can place that weather vane and use a comparator to detect whether it's raining or not. And right now it is powered because it can detect that. So what I'm going to do is place down the Celestial Manipulator and configure the redstone to clear the skies every time it gets a redstone signal. I'm going to pop some power into this. And then you'll see when it gets that redstone pulse, it will make the world's worst noise ever. I'm going to turn that right off. And it has cleared the rain, or it will be clearing the rain. Let's have a look. Should do it. There we go. All cleared up. I don't necessarily want the one for time day because there's actually some exclusive mons that we can get late at night. So for now, I'm not actually going to have that set up, but the weather clear, I need that, man. That is so jarring when that happens. I know, a British person being afraid of the rain, that is something else. So what's next? I want to set up a quantum bridge. I moved my controller to this room here. I actually expanded this space a little bit and created the full 3x3x3 controller. But the problem is the wireless connectors can only work in the same dimension. So how do I do it cross-dimensionally? Well, to do that, we need the quantum ring, and we're going to need the quantum link chamber made like so, and then 8 quantum rings made like this. I'm going to set up a little ring over here. You make a ring like that and then place a quantum link chamber here. I'm then going to go into my gym jar and set up one just over here, like so. And then we need to link them together. Now, the way that we do that is by getting one of the singularities that we crafted earlier. And we actually need to split this. The way that we split it is by using TNT and some ender dust, and we'll get 2 quantum entangled singularities. So I've got some ender dust. We also need some TNT, and I'm actually going to use this tiny TNT from Applied Energistics. This just does a little less of an explosion, and we'll go outside our base, plop down the tiny TNT with a lever, take our magnet off, throw both of these in there, and then we'll light that tiny TNT. And there we go. That's created the 2 quantum entangled singularities. So what we do is we place one of those quantum linked singularities into that link chamber here. And then we go to the gym jar and place the other one in here. And when they're linked, you'll see that weird little particle effect there showing that they're linked. But it's still device offline. And that's because we need to hook this up to our controller. So all I'm going to do is grab this controller over here and plonk another one over here. And we'll link both of those up. Using our setup kit, we'll right click there and right click there. And that should mean that if I go to the gym jar, we actually can access our AE system from that gym jar. It says device online. If I grab a cable and then crafted a terminal, I should be able to grab a cable, plop a terminal on the side here and see all of my items in my AE system. So what I can do now is actually link up a bunch of the appliances and machines that we've got around here. So one of the things I'm going to do is grab a cable and attach this to our storage controller here using a storage bus like that and set the priority to quite high. Add a couple of upgrades to that controller and then grab my linking tool and link some of the existing drawers to here. So one of the main ones that I'll link is this one with the skulk and honeycomb, and then the other one is the XP candies. So
I can now access those XP candies from my AE system, which is really, really neat. I'm going to make sure that any of the systems that we're pulling out of, I'm going to lock the drawer just to make sure nothing else goes inside there. I could also link up some of our botany pots just over here, like so. And again, everything that I link up will now have a place in our AE system, such as chicken essence, nature essence, and wood essence. All three of these I got off camera. The seeds were not difficult at all. And one of the cool things I can do is that little wither guy over here. I can pop a fluid drawer right on top and make it so that the output pushes up top so that we're getting ether gas into a fluid drawer. And then I can link and lock this drawer here, and I can get ether gas from my gym jar into my AE system. Now, I was debating on actually making the bee for this, but to be completely honest with you, I don't think we need much of it. The only thing that we'd really need a lot of it for is the Supreme machine frames. These are used for things like soul surging later on, but it only requires 135 ether gas, and we've got over 32,000 of it, so we're not going to run out anytime soon. For now, let's take a little detour onto bees. I'll explain how I've got this whole setup here, what I've done off camera, and how you can approach this the same way. So you've got the regular Minecraft beehives, but the advanced oak beehive is probably your starting point onto productive bees. That requires a campfire and a shears, and these are really useful. If I plonk one down here, you can see all three of the bees inside, and when the bees produce combs, they'll appear in this inventory slot rather than you having to shear the hive. You can then craft yourself the oak expansion box and place that on top to get 2 more slots of bees and some upgrades. These work the exact same as Minecraft beehives, of bees coming out and then back in, producing combs and honey that you can take. However, you can craft yourself something called a simulator upgrade. This requires just some regular combs, some blaze rods, ender pearls, and then you need to make the anti-teleportation upgrade, like so, and the upgrade base, which requires sticks, emeralds, diamonds, and then honey treats, which are literally just honeycomb mixed with a honey block. They're really easy to craft. Once you've got one of those, you can pop that in your hive, and that will turn your beehive into a simulated beehive, meaning bees will no longer come out and in, they'll just stay in this block, and provided that you've got flowers in front of them or a feeding slab with a flower inside, they will then produce combs and honey. To get bees into your hive, you're going to want to craft yourself some bee cages, just using logs and a honey block, and once you craft one of those, you can right-click bees to put them in an item form. And then you can literally just plonk them into your hive. Now, bee cages are only one-time use. You can get yourself the sturdy bee cages. These can come from villager trades, or you might find them in dungeon loot. And these are renewable. These will never break. But I tend to just carry around a stack of bee cages. Now, the reason we love simulated hives so much is because you can time one them. So I've got that time wanded to 128 times, and look how many combs that produces. Yeah, it gets a bit crazy. You can also craft yourself productivity upgrades. This is the productivity alpha, the first upgrade, and this increases the production output of your bees by 120%, and you can add 3 of them on top of your simulator upgrade. You can also upgrade these to the next tier, the beta tier. The next tier after that is the gamma upgrade, and that has a simulator already built in to that recipe, and then the one after that is the omega upgrade. Does require unobtainium though, so it's very expensive. But this one will do 260%, and it has that block upgrade inside, so that instead of combs that it produces, it actually produces blocks of honeycomb. So it's more dense, and when we get into centrifusion, you can process these quicker. The setup that I'm using to collect the combs and process them in the centrifuges is actually the same one that I used in my bee factory from Civless. I won't be showing that in this episode, but if you're interested, check out the link at the top right of your screen now. All of the code and logic will be shown off in that video instead. But my SFM code basically takes all the combs, pops them in this barrel, and then all of the things from this barrel gets centrifuged and popped into this item interface over here, which then appear in a separated AE system. And speaking of this, I actually want to link this in with my current network that I made. And now that we've got that quantum ring, I can. So what I'm going to do here is place an ME interface on this side, an ME storage bus facing it, and then pop some cable in like so. In the Productive Bees questline, it shows you how to get all the way up to Ancient Bees. This is something that I did off camera, because personally I find the bee breeding stuff
to be fun to play, but not very fun to watch. And so in this video, I'm not going to cover how I got ancient bees. And if you guys are interested, I can cover this in another video, but I've already done this for Civless, and I know that countless people have done productive bees so many times that there's no real point in me rehashing this, unless you'd actually benefit from it. So for now, I'm going to skip all the way until we actually got to ancient bees. So in the background, I have produced quite a few bees. I've got the ancient bees here. I've got some quarry bees. These aren't too difficult. You just need a digger bee and a chocolate mining bee. And the digger bee comes from gravel nests. So that's really easy. And what you can do there is basically put a bunch of different items into its feeding slab and it will generate more of them. But things like cobblestone, things like andesite, moss, dirt, all of that can be produced by this quarry bee. So he is really handy. I got myself the plastic bee. I mentioned that last episode. That is a really good bee to get your hands on. You need a resin bee. That comes from a spruce nest. And then you need a lumber bee, which comes from the yellow carpenter and green carpenter that you can get from oak logs, which actually produces both of these bees. And once you breed up to get that plastic bee, you need to pop some plastic in its flowering block just here, and it will produce plastic combs. And those plastic combs centrifuge into plastic and then latex. So we're actually also getting latex as a liquid in our system, as well as the plastic sheets. I got myself some radioactive bees. These are producing me uranium, raw uranium to be more precise. And right now I'm just using that for powering my extreme reactor. And lastly, I've got draconic bees. Draconic bees are from the end. You just need to get yourself an obsidian nest and some dragon's breath, and they use the dragon egg as their feeding slab. And what we're producing with them are these draconic dusts. These can be turned into draconic chunks, and then they can be turned into those productivity alpha upgrades that I showed earlier. And I'm going to set this storage bus here to extract only. So we're only going to be able to take from this system. And you can see all of the plastic here, all of the honey that we've got, and even some of that latex as well. So all of the items that we're producing over here can actually be fetched from our system. So let's get to our next set of bees. That is the AllTheModium bees. If you press R on this bee, you'll see it actually says that we need to look up the recipe for its spawn egg, because this process is actually a little bit different. We need to get ourselves an ancient bee spawn egg and pour molten AllTheModium over it. So to do that, I ended up breeding up a load of ancient bees. To get the genes out of them, you also need to grow them up into adult bees, which you can do by placing them in the incubator with 20 honey treats, or there's a little tip here, the Ars Nouveau Vitalic Source Link works a treat here. All baby mobs near a Vitalic Source Link will grow up insanely quickly, and so I had an entire wall here that looked incredibly ugly. Again, it's temporary. And a catcher with an adult bee upgrade, so that it would only catch the adults. That way I'd spawn in the bees using the bee cages, and then they'd be caught by the adult catcher. And then we get into the slightly dodgy part. We're basically going to squish up these bees. This is the same semi-automatic setup that I made in my Civless series as well. And what this system basically is a squished piston down onto a bottler with a bunch of glass bottles inside, a dispenser pointing into this, which will dispense the bee and then crush it down into squished bee material, which then gets shot out, picked up by our item collector and put into our powered centrifuge, which then centrifuges that squished bee material into a bunch of DNA components. Now these get pulled out really quickly, so I'm just going to have to take away that upgrade for now. And you'll see these are all the gene samples. They get pulled out into our gene indexer. This is basically a massive chest for genes, and the problem that you'll find is that a lot of these genes will have small percentages. So if you pop a redstone signal on top like that, it will actually convert all of the smaller percentages into larger percentages, and then eventually you'll get 100% genes like this. The most important one that we're going to be using is this type gene. This is the specific type of bee that we've been crushing up. And in the case of the ancient bee, we need to grab ourselves some of these nether ones. This is actually the ancient bee sample. It's just called netherite for some reason. And what we do with that gene sample is we can take it over to our bee incubator. And instead of honey treats in that slot, we're actually going to grab ourselves some eggs. I'm currently generating eggs from chicken essence. And the way that I got chicken essence is through chicken seeds. And for that, you need to grab yourself some soul jars full of chickens. Now that might be a bit difficult considering chickens don't spawn, but if you use the soul extractor, you can pop chicken-based materials in here to get your soul jar filled up. So we had a bunch of feathers, a bunch of raw chicken, and I placed that in there to fill up the chicken soul jar. And that's how we're generating the chicken essence, and I've just crafted up some of that to make the eggs. Anyway, what we do next is we place in 5 of our honey treats and mix that up with the gene sample to get honey treats with that gene sample, type netherite, and then we place them with some eggs in our system, and that will incubate these eggs to turn them into netherite bee spawn eggs or ancient bee spawn eggs.
I'm going to time on that because this is incredibly slow right now. And there we go. That is the ancient bee spawn egg. Perfect. Some of the keen-eyed amongst you might have actually seen the very high productivity on those bees. The way that you get that is by placing a bee nest on your head and then taking damage from some kind of mob. There's a 30% chance that a kamikaze bee will spawn, and all kamikaze bees have a very high productivity. So if you stand next to the catcher and take some damage from either a Pokemon or a skeleton or a zombie, you'll start spawning those in, and then you can do the exact same gene squishing to get yourself very high productivity. Very high productivity just means that the bees will produce more combs. So to get the AllTheModium egg, we need to get the molten AllTheModium, pour that over the ancient bee egg. The problem is with AllTheModium is we need soul lava to actually melt this. It needs a really high temperature. And we currently don't have soul lava. So there's only one way to get it. We can get it from the other dimension, which I'll show in a second. And we can actually generate it using a soul lava bee. The way that we get that soul lava bee is by pouring soul lava onto a ghostly bee. So I have actually managed to get myself a gene sample for that bee. Only the one for now, but I can't imagine we'll need many of these. And I'll grab myself a tank and we'll head over to the other dimension. Similar to how I have a teleport pad that sends me to the mining dimension if it's placed in the overworld, I can go to the nether dimension and place a teleport pad down here and it will teleport me to the other dimension. If I shift right click there, this is the other dimension. Very, very spooky, very cool. And in fact, we've spawned next to an AllTheModium apricorn tree. That's crazy. And there's some really interesting things. One of the things is that we can actually get Creepy-on spawning around here. These aren't creepers, these are actually a mon, and apparently they're no explosion. Well, that's pretty accurate, and they insta-kill us. Brilliant. Right, note to self, don't fight them. Anyway, what we're looking for here is actually some soul lava, and this can spawn underground, so I'm going to have a little search and hopefully find some. In fact, we've already found it. That's crazy. Literally just down here. So what I'm going to do is just bucket a bunch of this up like so. I'm using the mechanism tank here, and if you shift and mouse button, you can put it to bucket mode, so you can just pick up the lava directly from here. Right, and that is a full advanced tank filled with soul lava. For this, I'm going to make a small productive metalworks foundry. I've got 3x3 of liquid heating cores, and I'm going to surround all of this in black fire bricks, just like so. There we go, that's looking good. And then I want to pop out a couple of holes here. One for a black foundry controller. I'm going to pop out some tanks just over here that will fill up with soul lava. And then I will pop down a drain just over here, and that has actually activated the foundry. And on either side of that drain, I'm going to place a casting table and a casting basin with foundry taps on the outside of them. And then I'm going to just plop the black bricks in again like so. And then I'm also going to cover around the corners just to make that look a little bit neater. So I'm going to right-click the black foundry tanks to fill them up with soul lava. I'll grab quite a few of this AllTheModium that we found in the mining dimension. So that is 20 AllTheModium for our 5 ancient bee eggs. I will pop all of that in the controller. That will then smelt up. And I can right-click my ancient bee onto the casting table and pour AllTheModium over it to get that AllTheModium bee. Great, that has cooled, and we've now got the spawn egg for that. I'm going to do that with the rest of the bees as well. Right, that is the 5th AllTheModium bee spawn egg. We are looking good. I'll also get that soul lava egg, and the way that I'm going to do that is right-clicking the drain instead of the tank with soul lava, and that should put in, let's put in 4 buckets. We only needed the 1. So what I'll do is pop down the ghostly bee and pour the soul lava over that to get our soul lava bee egg. Perfect. I'm also going to grab 6 of these productivity very highs, as well as my honey treats, so that when I spawn in these guys, I can then apply the very high productivity and then cage them back up. We'll do that with all of our AllTheModium ones as well. For the AllTheModium bee, we also need its flowering block, which is a block of AllTheModium. Luckily, we've got enough for that. So I will craft that up, and then we'll head over to the gym jar. Right, we've got this slot over here that's empty for it, so what I'll do is plonk down all of my AllTheModium bees, pop in the feed-in slab like so, and then if I time-wand it, I should be able to see AllTheModium combs being produced. And they will be centrifuged by our system here, and then that will produce us AllTheModium nuggets. Brilliant. We now have an automatic source of AllTheModium. For our soul lava bee, we actually need to place the soul lava down. So I'm going to move this bee over here and right click here to place the soul lava, pop our soul lava bee in, And then if I time on this, we should get soul lava combs. We do, which produces us some soul lava, and I've got a fluid disk here, which is now storing that. So we've now got soul lava appearing in our AE system. Cool. In that small bit of time, we've still got a load of combs to process through. But when I time wanded those bees, we've now got, let's see, how much have we got of all the AllTheModium ingots? We've got over a stack of these ingots now, just from time wanding that block. Check me out now. I've got a full AllTheModium set on, as well as I upgraded that netherite pickaxe to the AllTheModium. So now we are fully AllTheModium kitted out. But I'm not done. I want to get Vibranium and Unobtainium by the end of this episode. So how do we do that? Well, we find it in the nether. We already found quite a few knocking about. They look like this. Yeah, here you go. This sort of glowing ore right there. That's what Vibranium looks like. So we're going to grab a little bit of that. Saw another one down here as well. Right, I found 8 at the moment. I think that will do for now. Crush that up into Vibranium dust. And then we'll smelt that to get the Vibranium ingots. And then we'll need 1 for the block of Vibranium. That'll be for the flowering block. And then we need 4 to upgrade one of our AllTheModium bees into a Vibranium bee. So for now, I'm going to grab 5 of those netherite samples, turn them into the netherite spawn eggs. Great. And then melt down a bunch of AllTheModium onto the ancient spawn eggs to get some more AllTheModium bees. And then I will pour 4 of the Vibranium on, and we'll only do 1 of the eggs for now because we don't have much Vibranium. There we go, that's all melted up. We'll convert the AllTheModium into a Vibranium spawn egg. Fantastic. And if I pop to the gym jar, I will pop down the Vibranium spawn egg, right-click him with the very productive treat, then we'll pop him in one of these unused hives with a simulator upgrade and some productivity gamma. Pop this guy in there, pop the feeding slab. After I time wanded that bee, we ended up with a lot of Vibranium, and so I could then convert the last 4 bees. Now for Unobtainium, it's a bit of a different process. You need to go to the end and find yourself an End Highlands biome. You can use the Nature's Compass for this one, it's really easy. You'll see right here is the End Highlands, and you need to basically dig this island out to hopefully find yourself some Unobtainium. One thing to help you out is actually a destruction gadget from Just Dire Things. Super easy to craft. And you can set this to have the largest radius possible, like so, and just break the blocks like this. And you'll notice that Unobtainium ore doesn't actually get broken. So this can be a really handy way to actually find yourself a bunch of Unobtainium really easily. And I've got a couple of spare fortune books lying around, so you know what, I am actually going to do it. I'm going to apply fortune onto this tool. And we need to upgrade it to the Vibranium tier. Right, so I'll grab one of the Vibraniums, one of the Vibranium ingots, and then we'll use the smithing table to make that happen. So we've now got a fortune 3 plus 3 levels of fortune because of the affix on our tool. So now, when we mine this Unobtainium, we should end up getting quite a lot more. Oh yeah, that's a lot more. Perfect. After I was done processing all of the Unobtainium, I then created the bees and then organised my setup so all 3 of the metals were next to each other. Right, there we go. They're all on the same level now. This looks really nice. I'm loving this. And since we were generating so much Vibranium, I thought I'd upgrade all of my tools, armour, and even my spellbook to the Vibranium tier. Check us out now. This is probably my favourite set of armour. I like the Unobtainium one, but this one just looks sick. I love it. We're getting stronger and even more automated every single episode. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you next episode. Take care.